This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Hey, thanks very much for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well wherever you are listening from throughout this blue and green world. Now then, to the matter at hand. This is a conversation that features Jekyll Jones from Gangs of Old Ladies and Vegas Rhythm Kings. The catalyst for the chat, though, is the new release, the new single called Raped by Ghosts from Gangs of Old Ladies. This is a killer band. Ghoul, get it? Gangs of Old Ladies, Ghoul, G-O-O-L. Because not just is it a vehicle for Jekyll Jones to mine his considerable talent, the group features Clemens Weijers from Karash Angren. I probably got the pronunciation of both the name and the band name there incorrect, but anywho, if you know who I'm talking about. But Joe Haley from Psychroptic is also a part of it, as is David Anderson, a recent guest on the podcast. He lends his talents to the group as well. Something else, I was talking to Jekyll and he mentioned that Rick Ross, who used to be the guitarist in Death and Massacre, has joined the group full-time as well. So that's a hell of a coup for Jekyll there to get a guitarist of that stature to join the band. But something about this conversation I need to say up front, we don't address the music as directly throughout the conversation. What we do is we just chat. Okay, so this is one of those ones where it's wide open and we talk about basically whatever's been on our minds. So it's a bit light on the musical front, but it's a worthwhile conversation nonetheless, because a point that I made with Jekyll is that I love giving people an insight into the person behind the music. You can always look at photos and you listen to the music, but as long-time listeners will know, I try to go deep with a conversation and uncover lesser known or understood aspects of the individual that I'm talking to, and this conversation is a really good example of that. So on that note, up front, we talked for about 4 or 5 minutes about our families and stuff before we got stuck into a conversation about the impact of COVID on heavy metal. So that's where things commence. So you'll hear me make not an introduction, but a statement, and we kick things off from there. Anyway, here he is. Jekyll Jones from Gangs of Old Ladies and Vegas Rhythm Kings. Anything that isn't a part of the engine of the government, so to speak, okay? Heavy metal clearly will never be part of that engine, okay? So all of the small businesses, all of the mums and dads doing their own thing, usually mums and dads that are renting premises, like Crowbar, aka Brightside, or whatever it might be called these days, they just were left for dead during this, and this is the shadow pandemic.
Absolutely. I'm actually friends with the guy who owns the Brightside and owns the Destroyer Lines touring company. Mm-hmm. And he was just gobsmacked, devastated, I suppose, because we were I wasn't going, but the Offspring had sold out. And a friend of mine was like, I really want to go. I said, really? He goes, yeah. So I said, I just made a phone call and then I had 4 tickets for him. He's like, how did you do that? And I said, it's just the magic of journalism. But, that never happened. And then it just got worse and worse. And, then the Crowbar shut up shop for good up here, and which was a shame because the last show that we sort of had here was at the inside of the Brightside, and it was the Corrosion of Conformity show.
Yeah, I was at that. Yeah.
Those orange amps, man, how good did that sound? And I was excited because, I've been to the Crowbar for a lot of shows. I've done some work with one of the guys from Laceration Mantra. It was actually the guy who started Misery, me and Scott Edgar.
Oh, wow. Great
tracks together. And I was there when they were supporting Marduk, and, been to some great concerts there. That's where I started doing journalism, actually, because I turned around and Luke LeMay was beside me from Gorguts. And we just had this chat, and he said, oh, you should be in journalism. And I was like, okay. So somehow I just got wound up in it and connected with the right people and stuff, and it sort of, went up from there, and then it sort of went down, and I feel really bad for, I've been lucky enough work-wise, my wife's in aged care, And I've switched jobs this year, but still both essential industry. And I can't imagine what it would be like to not be an essential worker. How are you supposed to pay the bills? Because the bills just keep coming, and I know the banks and all those companies say, "Oh yeah, we'll work with you," but do they? I don't know. I just think it would be absolutely terrible. But at the same time, I'm not one of those people who gets science from someone who didn't pass high school. COVID's a very real and very dangerous thing, and we have to sort of find a way around it. I still can't believe, everyone has a right with their own body, but I'm fully vaccinated with Pfizer, have been for months. Second dose, felt a bit shit that night, to be honest, but the next day it was gone. And, no magnets stuck to my arm. I haven't had any thoughts of supporting the government or, anything like that. And I just don't understand why in this age of science when, one of the simplest ways we can defeat this is to actually go and get yourself vaccinated. People are up such a stink, and to the point that actually one of our friends on Facebook, love her dearly, was posting absolute nonsense. And I was actually quite pleased to see that Facebook had started blocking her posts saying that they'd been peer reviewed by science platforms and found to be false news. And I was like, well, that's kind of good because social media is great for people being able to share ideas and share ideologies and sort of, have that sort of freedom. Without, the press involvement or, people can feel a little bit more open-tongued sometimes from behind a keyboard. But at the same time, I think Sacha Baron Cohen made a good example that, misinformation spreads so much faster than the truth these days, and that's one of the dangerous things about the modern era. So, yeah, what we're going to do about it, I don't know. I just hope everyone sort of rolls up their sleeves and realise that if you really do care about getting music and that back on board, get vaccinated. It's not a big thing.
I think it's just the governments have handled it so badly. It's very hard to know how to trust them. Our fucking governments had no idea. And originally too, look, when people said, the Liberals have done such a great job, the Liberals didn't know what to do. The guy that wrote all of the stuff in 2020 was an ex-Labor backbencher because they basically threw their hands up in the air and said, we don't know what we're doing. And so it was actually an ex-Labor backbencher who came in and wrote most of that sort of policy. And dipping into our own super funds wasn't really an answer. It sort of helped, but it wasn't really a great answer. And my biggest thing with the government is more the fact of things like the use of the term vaccine rollout. I was just lucky enough that because my wife is in aged care, that her boss said, hey, there's a hub opened up doing Pfizer at the hospital. So I got onto it straight away. But in terms of what I would consider to be a rollout and what has actually happened are two very different things. I think some alcohol companies have rolled alcohol out better than the government's rolled out this vaccination, It's been sort of put back on you to go, oh, yeah, look, you go and find it, go and, you go and search for it. To me, that's not a rollout. And then in terms of the information about it and sort of that sort of stuff, when I went to the hospital, it was great. They had a lot of stuff playing up there to keep you amused for the 15 minutes that you had to sit. And there's quite a few police officers and other sort of social sort of workers that I would consider that should be mandatory because they're dealing with the public quite a lot. And a really mixed group. You couldn't tie it to any race or ethnicity or any religious. I saw all sorts of people from Sikhs through to, all different people of different creeds and different age groups too. So it sort of did make me feel happy that there was quite a few people who were smart enough to sort of follow science and actually sort of look for truth. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't just sort of go, okay, I'll go and get that because they said, to do a little bit of research and stuff. And I researched the mRNA vaccines and went, no, look, I've got no problem with doing that. And you don't have polio in primary schools these days. It's because we have a polio vaccine. You don't really have measles much anymore because we have a measles vaccine, I just don't understand the conspiracy idea of what the government has to win from this whole thing because, people talk about it being, they're taking away your freedom and taking away your whatever, and it's like the government's losing. They're losing money at a rapid rate. The top ones, ScoMo or ScoMo, as Friendly Geordies likes to call him, jetting in and out of Sydney, to me just shows that
we don't have the right people in power at the moment, because a leader is someone that you should aspire to follow and look up to, and, you know, who shows you the right thing to do. And to me, that guy does the absolute opposite of what the right thing to do is. But
are you typically, would you describe yourself as a fairly like a standard Labor voter? Is that who you'd more lean towards, state and federal?
I wouldn't say standard Labor, but I'd preference Labor before I preference the Liberals. I usually vote Green, to be honest. Some of their policies are a little bit, probably impossible, but just the idea.
How do you reconcile their wokeness with mainstream Australia?
I think the problem is, and I'll be honest, that there's still a lot of people, and especially in my wife's nursing home, that older generation, that have that white Australia policy in their head. You know what I mean? That see the world as kind of, oh no, you can't do that, Ramadan or whatever else. That's not Australian. That's not the way we do things. And it's like, well, actually, my neighbour from next door, she's Chinese. She's from Hong Kong. One of my best friends at work is an Indian guy from southern India, Budapur Venkatanem, and we sort of have that ideology that you kind of, and that's what I like about the metal scene up here, is that you accept everyone. And that's what I thought metal was about. When I got into metal, I was 12 or 11. It was because I saw an Iron Maiden poster. And I loved the poster, so I bought the tape because it was on special. Cassettes. And through Maiden, like, you know, Bruce Dickinson and his love of history, etc., I started sort of learning a little bit more about history and becoming interested in different topics. And I think the more you expand your mind and your horizons, like I can speak Thai, we've been there quite a few times and done a lot of Asian sort of country travel with the kids, that your borders kind of open up. And it's not just also a white Australia thing. It works the other way too, with like other people that sort of, you know, don't want to sort of mix, you know what I mean? Like everyone sort of has to be a little bit free on both sides of the fence to kind of to mix together. And I like how the Greens kind of say, let's not focus on all these kind of policies. Let's worry about, like, things could be better. Back when the government used to own the power stations and before it was freelanced, and even technology, like an SMS, you know, some of the phone plans are better now, but the average prepaid plan, an SMS works out to be something like 5 or 10 cents. And I think that it's something like 5,000% inflation on what it actually costs them to do. And I know it sounds a bit like communism, but the idea that we own the most essential services and that we put money back into those things and we try and sort of make it better and fairer for everyone, I'm very on board with that. I think that we've got a massive class difference in Australia, massive class differences, and I don't think there's some good money, there's some good programs, but I still think we've got a long way to go before we sort of have people who are flying around in private jets saying that they can talk about whatever. You know, I think all of Australia would agree, and it's like I don't think you'd actually understand what half of Australia is actually about, you know. And I just think that with politics, until you actually cut the wages, which is going to be very difficult because you're going to have people that are going to vote themselves to have less money, you're only going to ever get people that are interested in making cash versus people who are actually interested in making social changes and making social difference. So, didn't want to get too heavy on the politics there with you, sorry, but yeah, just...
No, that's all right. No, look, the podcast is a platform for any that's the beauty of it. Until someone censors me, and it's just not going to happen. You know, until I'm Joe Rogan size or something like that, it's not going to happen. Talk about whatever you want to bring up. You know, it's look, it's always good to talk to. Look, the important thing is we live in a democracy, and you're allowed to have an opinion, and long may that be the case. That's the main thing, is that respect different ideologies, different opinions, and the like. But look, there's many things that I'd change, but that's me. You know, by and large, there's a couple of things. You know, my father-in-law was from Croatia, and he had to leave because he was going to get killed. So we've got family members that close family members that have been through that sort of thing. And if you,
I used to work with a guy who was from Bosnia, and he was just telling me the way that things went south. He said 1 week you had people that were your neighbours, and within a month those people were wearing uniforms and hitting people over the head with batons, and it just went. And like some of the stories were just outrageous, and that was before they fled. And I don't know, news stories from around the world, I guess. A lot of people say to me, why do you make horror when the world's so full of horror? And it's like, what we make is fantastical to me. It's just the grown-up version of a Cinderella story, you know? But actual real horror, all you got to do is, like the Skyhook said, turn on your TV. There it is every night, you know what I mean?
The Skyhooks, yeah. The old Sharpies band. I like them. I've played a few of their songs. Women in Uniform, that's one. The Iron Maiden cut.
Yeah. I grew up as a kid with Shirley Strawn used to do Shirl's Neighborhood. And it was like a kids' TV show in the mornings. And which was actually a Trivial Pursuit question I got right the other night too. So
that down at the pub, or was that at home, just chillaxing?
Here at home. We play board games, Boggle, Trivial Pursuit, and Scrabble. And my wife is a terrible speller and absolutely amazing at Scrabble. And she'll just come out with these words, and I have to check it in the Scrabble dictionary. And I'm like, how did you know that? And she goes, oh, I didn't. I just thought it sounded like a word. And I'm like, what? And here's me. I'm writing, novellas and stuff, and I'm losing by 150 points. But I've never been very good at anagrams. And to me, Scrabble is basically anagrams, sort of so. And she'll go, give me a look at your letters. And she'll go, oh, look, you could do this. And it's like, oh. Okay, that was better than the 8 points I got. But, that and the Trivial Pursuit was it's a hand-me-down from when my wife was a child, so it's a full 80s version. So nice. You have to think backwards, which makes it kind of fun because it's like, in 1984, what pop band? And we're like racking our brains, and the answer was Duran Duran. And I wouldn't think of Duran Duran as a pop band, like I think of them as like sort of alternate rock from that era kind of thing. So just that whole trying and there was a question the other night, I can't remember what it was, but the answer to what that is actually changed in what we reference it to. And it's just, it's kind of fun. And we're thinking, should we buy a modern version? And it's like, we're terrible at sports here. We're not my daughter plays basketball, and my son skateboards and scooters, and my wife's sort of trying to learn to skateboard on a straight. And I can drop in on his scooter. But as far as like following footy and that sort of stuff, we're not one of those kind of households. We're more about music and art. And so whenever the orange questions come up, the sport ones, it's just...
It's a hard pass, is it?
Yeah, no idea. In 1985, who won the... I don't know. I think the big question we've got right so far was my son. It was what mascot represents the Footscray football team and the...
Canterbury Bankstown.
Canterbury Bankstown, yeah. The CEO didn't even know. It was the Bulldogs, and she knew it. And he was like, how did you know that? And she goes, because that's one thing I do know. And I was like, well, there you go. So, but we're one of those families. September here in Brisbane, we've got Riverfire, but there's a lot of visual art stuff that sort of goes up. They're doing a blow-up sort of display. A couple of months ago in the city, they had it was like art by night, and it was all these things done in the botanical gardens. There was like 8 different artists who had pieces out. So we'll go to that sort of thing, and we'll take the kids to the gallery and stuff. And and my wife's a painter. She does most of the makeup and stuff for all the clips.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah.
And then
that looks great. Yeah. I love what you guys are doing, especially what you're doing with Vegas Rhythm Machine as well. I got into that after we connected and the interview was lined up. The chat was lined up.
The Vegas Rhythm Kings.
Vegas Rhythm Kings, sorry. But I've subbed on YouTube, and I just love that old school pungent stench groove you've got going on.
It's so funny because I remember when For God Your Soul, For Me Your Flesh came out. And because I got into death metal very early. We were there for the first wave, and it was like 1989. This guy saw my Iron Maiden shirts, and he's like, all right, you listen to metal? And I'm there, and he's like, come over here, I'll show you some metal. And he had like Creator and Bolt Thrower and Obituary, Slowly We Rot. They didn't even have 2 albums out at the time. Listening to all this stuff, and I'm just like, whoa, this is a bit of a leap from Iron Maiden. And he burnt me a cassette of, on one side had Spiritual Healing and the other side had Leprosy. And that's actually how I learned to sing, by copying Chuck Schuldiner. And we had a band back when we were teenagers, and there was a guy who said he was going to be the singer, and he was trying to sing, and I said, I can do it better than that. They all looked at me, it was like scrawny and 14. And they're like, here, hand me the microphone. I was like, bro. And they're like, oh, you can do it. And we sort of, we were sort of, we had a bit of groove, but we're heavy. But I always had a bit of a thing for pungent stench. And it was about 3 albums in or the 4 albums in, I can't remember. But I got in touch with Martin Sharang and basically said, hey, would you work on a track together? And that's where God of Surgical Steel comes from. And we still laugh about it now because, as you said, I'm not really a solo player. I'm more of a sort of just a rhythmy player. And the solo he did on that track is amazing. And it annoys me to this day that the best solo he's ever done wasn't in his own band.
I had them on the other night, actually, on the Google Home Mini thing, and the recording quality isn't there. They never really had the budget to do something that was going to produce something that sounded like Carcass or what have you. But Pungent Stench, still a great band. The songs are there. I think that's the key thing. The songs are there and they endure. To me, production is I'm not going to say I'm into that sound of black metal, like let's use one $3 microphone in the middle of a room. But you can listen to a band and they can be so overproduced that you're just not sure what you're actually hearing. I listened to a band the other night I'd never heard of called, I think it was called the Gemini Syndrome. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was their name, and it was called IDK, I don't know. And which I do like the shortening of IDK I think that's quite clever. But the singer looks like Colonel Sanders. And legit can sing, and they sort of go heavy and soft and they're all over the place, but like it's so produced you're just not sure what the actual music would sound like without the 4,000 hours of sort of studio engineering, if you know what I mean. And when I asked Rick Ross to join the band, he was like, he goes, I've already been listening to Demonic Drug Pig because the guy who did our logo showed it to him. And he goes, I've got a whammy solo already written for it. I was like, oh, okay, you don't want to work on a new one? He goes, no, I want to do like the Rick Ross version. We call him Razor is his nickname. I want to do the Razor edition of Demonic Drug Pig. And Simon was like, well, as you can hear from Demonic Drug Pig through as we go along, the production's getting better. And it's all done in Simon's little studio he built, and he's self-taught, so he's getting better and better. And he was like, oh, should I go back and, we'll re-record the whole thing? And I got in touch with Rick, and Rick was like, no, don't touch it. He's like, that rawness that's in that song, he goes, people are too scared to put something out these days that's just that little bit underproduced, So, and for me, I like it because it sets like a marking point. That's where we started in the sand. And you listen to Raped by Ghosts, and the quality's very different. We're getting better, but you go back to Demonic Drug Pig and the song's still there, the music's still there, but the production, it probably could be a little bit better. And, the vocals were a little bit muddier and stuff, but it really is like there's the beginning point, and I'm really quite proud of it. And I think with Vegas Rhythm Kings, I wrote all the music, played all the bass and guitars and vocals, and wrote most of it on an acoustic, or actually I've got a Dean Razorback that I imported from the States. There's one good thing about the GFC is when our dollar went up in America, they were about 4,000 in the music shop, and they were $1,000. I got one imported from the States in a hard case. So I bought it over.
Same. Yeah, I did the same at that time. I went to New York and bought a bunch of guitars.
Yeah. And you can't even ship guitars now because eBay has a few years ago, they changed who it is that brings them through, and now they try and charge you this massive importation tax at the hub, So once upon a time, it would just go straight through. So that Razorback's what I use pretty much on everything, and I had an off BC Rich Warbeast that was kind of green. There was something wrong with the paint that came out of the factory, and it needed some of the frets put back down. And Kerry King was actually in the country for Soundwave when it was back at the headquarters, and he dropped in because, his BC Rich sort of endorsed. And he was like, wow, what's wrong with this guitar? Why is it green? And they're like, oh, it's one of the ways it came out like that. And it's like the guy that plays in this death metal band, Vegas Rhythm Kings. And he was like, oh, does he want me to sign it? And they rang me, and I was like, no, don't. And he thought that was hilarious. I'm like, I'm not really into scribble on guitars.
No, neither am I.
So he signed a photo for me instead, and they put that in the case. But yeah, I don't really like signing guitars because I like to polish them and keep them clean.
Hey, did you have one of Brian Hoffman's guitars too? Was that you?
Yeah, that's me. I've actually got it's a hybrid. So the body is a Gibson Flying V. The neck is a handcrafted, basically like the Scarab neck that Hoffman made on the Scarab guitars. Mm-hmm. And the electrics and everything else is all done by Neil Moser. For those who don't know, Neil was the guy who used to work with BC Rich in the late 70s, early 80s, designed the 10-string. I think it's the Rich Bitch it's called. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and he designed the electrics, etc. for it. So it's a one-of-a-kind V that honestly doesn't get played. It's been played once, I think, under the name Death Jester. I wrote a quick track that I played. It's like only a minute long, just mucking around with a home studio thing. But it just sits up in the corner of my room as
it's a museum piece, is it?
Yeah, basically. It's kind of like it's one of a kind, and the guitar shop in town's always like, we could move that thing for you. And I'm like, I don't have any. I'd rather the guitar than the cash kind of thing. So
did Brian make that for you, or was that a special order? So because
it was a special order for me.
Yeah, because I'm sure you know this. There's a lot of conjecture. It was about 10 years ago or so. Some kid in Australia, some kid here, did try to get a guitar made, and it never turned up. Did you see that?
Alex Miller, yeah.
Oh, you know all about it. Gosh, you know all about it, yeah.
Yeah, I was there was a thread at the time, and I commented on it, and some guy commented back, and he was like, oh, yeah, we're all DSI fans. We don't want to think he was a douchebag, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't bother replying, but the reason I said, that you should probably talk this out with Brian a bit more is because it wasn't because I was a DSI fan. I actually was doing ads for Brian. I did some for Kelly Slater, the vocalist from Atheist, had a bar as well. And I can put on that radio voice when I need to. And was doing a lot of those, you want your own custom metal guitar? You need a... And, yeah, so I did a few adverts for him. And basically my neck was more of a payment for the advertisements that I've done and put together for him. And it just was lucky enough that my mother-in-law was in the States because my brother-in-law lives in the States. And so he shipped it to my brother-in-law for nothing, like postage inside America isn't very expensive. And she brought it home in her suitcase. So the whole thing with Alex Miller was that somewhere along the way, as far as I can understand, and I've seen a picture of the original invoice, it's got a figure and it says plus shipping, but the shipping was meant to be like a cost on top of that cost as well, and they could never agree on that cost. And, of course, as you know, with customs and everything blowing out, the cost of the actual shipping the guitar became almost as much as what the guitar was. And then Brian kind of did do the wrong thing. He sold the guitar because he didn't think it would ever get to Australia to pay for his wedding.
Oh, and he didn't give the kids money back?
No, as far as I know, he didn't get a refund.
Yeah, that's not good, yeah.
And that's kind of where it stems. So I stepped back from that one and sort of say, that's on you. And I never really commented on it much after that. You know what I mean? Sort of that's kind of between them. I understand where the mistake happened, and a lot of people in the States kind of go, well, when you invest in a custom shop, if it goes broke, you lose the money and stuff. But I do feel that Brian could have, he sold the guitar. He could have done some more to make up for the money that was lost, because it was a substantial sum of money. It was a couple of grand.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a few hundred; it was a couple of grand. So,
well, I think his rep as a luthier after that. I mean, there was people from all over the world commenting on that one there. So, I mean, I think anybody wanted a Hoffman built guitar, the Scarab, probably wouldn't have ordered one after that if he was still in business.
And it's so funny because there's actually a site. There's two. I had one. I took mine down. It had about 8,000 members, and I suspended it because I just didn't want to be involved in the whole project anymore. But there's another one run by a guy overseas who's actually got 2 of his guitars, or maybe even 3. And there's quite a few people that have the Scarabs that got them, and a beautiful guitar. And the quality of the neck I got was absolutely amazing, and it was designed to be that short, it mimicked the Gibson V. So it was made to that, I think it's 25.5 scale or something they call it. So yeah, it was beautiful piece of gear, rosewood fretting and everything, really nicely done. But the whole deal that went down, there was a reason for Alex Miller to be upset. You know what I mean? A very good reason. And there's probably a reason why Amon's never gotten off the ground again, and why I think Brian actually still does work for Dean. But I don't think it's something that they announce, on the front page like they used to anymore. Like it used to be one of their sort of trademarks. Is not only that, but we've got the founder of Deicide as a luthier. I think now he just it's like just keeping quiet out the back. So
just build guitars and probably stay away from social media.
Yeah, stay away from social media.
Well, I tried talking to them online, and I can't remember which one of the brothers I spoke to very quickly via socials, just on a private message, direct message or whatever. But it was literally, he just deferred me to the other one. He gave me the other brother's email address and say, ask him. I think it was ask him email address. I did that. Heard nothing, and I just thought, no, if they're not interested, and they're not interested if they want to stay away from the public eye. But this is when Amon was actually coming back, so I thought they might have needed to talk about it.
Well, see, I know that the other brother Eric, as Glenn Benton said, did a lot of steroids. He was the muscly one.
Yeah,
it's funny because he can be quite gruff. He was a massive fan of the Vegas Rhythm Kings Dearly Beheaded film clip. He used to post it all the time. And when we made that video, we're like, oh, this will be a great idea. And then when we finished editing, we're like, oh, my God, what have we done? It's a pretty loose film clip. And then he loved it. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. But I was talking to Scott, and Scott was telling me that when they supported Deicide, this is back in the 90s, Misery, that he was a real prick. And basically someone loaned him a head to use, and he was having a big whinge about it. And the other guy that loaned the head, the other stage guy, was also a big muscly guy. And Scott said he was like, oh, here we go. But it never sort of eventuated into anything. But he said, yeah, he had a real sort of attitude problem. And he said Brian was really, really nice. And he said Benton was quite quiet. And the drummer, what's his name? Steve
Ashheim.
Yeah, Steve Ashheim. He actually wrote quite a lot of the riffs. People don't know either.
Yeah, he writes the music. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's Glenn's lyrics, but I think they're Glenn's and Steve's lyrics. But I mean, that was I didn't know. I shouldn't say I knew Ralph, but I had a number of interactions with Ralph.
Me too. I used to talk with Ralph Santola in emails. He was a lovely chap.
Yeah. Well, same as me. And I had a couple of chats to him. One made the podcast. One was a lot longer, and he didn't want it out there. I don't know why. He didn't want it out there. He just, there was something in it that he didn't want to tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. He didn't even throw shade at anybody. He was very honest about things. He told me about Jack Owen, what was going on there, and he goes, I don't care if that gets out, whatever. But then he, him leaving Deicide is what I'm sort of talking about, and that was about that time when Jack left, and it wasn't even that. I'll never know. I'll never ever know. But
me either. Because the thing is with Jack Owen, because I'm friends with him as well. Whenever I ask him anything, he will talk about anything except Deicide.
Yeah,
it's like, no, I won't even talk about it. Don't want to go there. So I don't know what the whole thing is there, but there's some sort of bad blood or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a bit of a no-go subject. So,
well, just I'm just making a time check here, just so as I can edit this bit out. Look, I was told it was about money and stuff. Same thing with Paula Lender and Cradle of Filth. Mate, these guys who actually write the fucking music don't actually get due credit. They might get the songwriting. You know this. You're one of the few people that'll get this. They get the songwriting credit, but none of the publishing.
None of the publishing. Yeah, that's why Simon left Dimmy Borger. The big tall-ass guy that can sing really nicely.
Who is that, sorry? Which member?
Simon from Dimmy Borger.
Okay, yeah.
He's the guy who in Progenies of the Great Apocalypse, he's the one who sings, Discover.
Oh, right, yeah. He's, he was in another band too. He was in another band at the same time. What was the other band called?
I can't remember.
Was it not Borknagar, was it?
He's like 7 foot tall, man. But it was the same thing. It was writing music and getting credits, but not getting any of the publishing money. And sort of, that's one of those things where at first we sort of sold a couple of T-shirts and some coffee mugs and stuff like that. And that was more just that interest to see who does it. But now I more just do things like I'll make up stubby coolers and coffee mugs and just say, hey, if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with 3 friends, I'll send you some free merch. And that's kind of what we do with it now, because I don't want to feel like I'm running a small business, like John's beating a coffee shop, you know what I mean? And it can get a bit tedious, sort of like that. And then it was kind of a bit of fun at first, and even with Vegas Rhythm Kings, I think we sold some wine there at one stage. Had some clean skins. Or clear skins, is that what they call them?
Clean skins, yeah. You're right, yeah. You labelled them, did you? You got the label and put it on the clean skins and sent it out.
So label off, made this awesome label up at the print shop, glued them on, and someone sent me a photo of one the other day because they're like, oh, look, I've still got one of these, is like up with their favourite guitar on a speaker, and neighbourhood dog. And it was Coffin Cabernet Merlot, and I had the whole wanky little spiel, like, you know, all wine makers do, and Maynard's probably the best at it. And we sold quite a few of them, and it's just more sometimes, I think, a little bit along the same lines as I read that Maynard has a shop in Arizona where he lives, and it's a Pussifer shop. And basically, because people make like the Maynard James Keenan, like the Buddha trek, you know, out to see where the mythical James lived, they sort of get the Pussifer logo and they stamp it on fucking anything they can get their hands on, whether it's a bag of coffee beans or potato chips or whatever. Yeah. And they sell it at the shop and they use it to put back into the recording of Pussifer albums. And I think that's kind of funny because it's more, as he said, just about that whole funniness of brand versus actually caring about what the product is, sort of thing. And I think that there's a bit of a lesson to be learned in that, to be honest. Especially with modern music, music. I was talking to Dave Vincent from Morbid. Yeah. Now what's the name of his new band?
I Am Morbid. Jesus, any other time I'd remember it, but it's got Flo.
All I can see is the triangle. It's got Flo on drums and.
Hang on, I'll check it out because it's going to drive me mad now. Hang on, because I normally know this stuff.
I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'll go.
Oh my God, it's not Genie Torturers. I'm mentioning every other band except for Ultimas. There you go.
With the V at the front. Okay, Cult. Yeah, which is a great band. But I was talking with him and I said, do you feel that music's, a bit flooded? Because I'd been having a similar conversation with Kurt from Metal Church the week before. And he had this great answer, and he basically said, I feel that it's not flooded, but it's very, very thick and heavy. He goes, however, I would never want to say anything or do anything that would discourage someone from picking up an instrument, because playing an instrument is as good as seeing a therapist. And I think one of my favorite things about interviewing bands is that, like, I grew up with a lot of these guys on my wall as posters as a teenager. And then to get to talk to them when I'm older, I haven't come across anyone yet who's just an arrogant asshole. They've all been really nice, had really nice things to say, and it's not a false conjecture, because kind of like me and you are, my interviewing style is more like we'll just chat. Like me and Carl Willits got in trouble for Nuclear Blast because we talked for like an hour and 30 minutes and we were supposed to have a 20-minute slot, and all these other people kept ringing, but he was just like, honestly, he goes,
he's just like, fuck it, we're talking.
Yeah, because this is great. And we were just having a chat about what it was like. My kids give me shit about it because I'm 45. I got into metal when I was 11 or 12, which is like 88, 89. So I was there for that first wave. But trying to explain to them, like back then, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have the internet. Or we did, but it was green writing on a black screen. And, a computer was not something you had at your house unless you were a rich person, and it was just so different. And music at the time, so I said to Carl, we would see you guys in like Terrorizer or Kerrang or something like that.
Metal Maniacs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Metal, if you want to go right back. And, it'd be a posed photo, and, you guys they'd put the best parts in there. And we'd think you guys were gods because you were so far away, so unreachable. The music was just absolutely fucking amazing. I love death metal. I love extreme metal. I also listen to classical. I don't understand where some people can never cross the bridge, when they sort of say, is that music? And I'm just kind of like, what is it you listening to? You know what I mean? Like, even my daughter, who's like, she's an Arctic Monkeys fan. She was into Iron Maiden when she was smaller, but she's sort of more into Arctic Monkeys and that now, which is fine by me.
British good band. I've got to say, I don't mind them actually. Yeah, their first song, that dance floor song, killer.
To me, they're a band that's progressed. They write their own music. And
exactly.
He's got some great little lyrics. There's some great little riffs in there too, and. I'm quite happy with listening to that compared to, the shit that's on top 10 or whatever it's called these days. But we'll be driving to work or school. I'll drop her off on the way, and she goes to a high school a few suburbs away, and she's got clarinet in the mornings. And I've got Nightmares Made Flesh at the moment by Bloodbath in the car.
Yep.
There's a CD player. I drive the car in the colder months. I ride the motorcycle in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And once upon a time it was all year round, but now I'm getting old and I'm like, oh, it's cold.
Joints are stiffer. Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, man. And then no one ever told me that when you get old, they're like, oh, you get old, you'll see. And it's just like, no one ever said, dude, when you get old, it fucking hurts. No one once said that. I just want everyone to know out there that you're going to feel it. One day, all of a sudden, you'll wake up, you'll be 40-something, and you'll go, that hurts. And you'll go to sleep, and you'll get up the next day, and it's still sore. That magic repair power just seems to disappear.
It's gone. Hangovers are brutal.
I haven't had a drink in 10 years, but I do still remember what hangovers were. I actually had to give up because I was a binge drinker. Not so much alcoholic, but when I drank a lot.
Yeah.
And the hangovers got to a point where I was giving myself neuropathy. Like I was having 16-hour hangovers that were full, like, migraine, brain deterioration kind of pain. And I just went, no. Though I had this one weekend where the kids were both really little, and I couldn't help my wife with the kids because I had just written myself off, and I just felt really guilty. And I went, you know what? And I just stopped. And I've never had a drink. I don't even have a glass of champagne at Christmas or anything like that. I'm just completely a non-drinker. But I see people with hangovers, and just looking at them, I remember that seedy feeling, and I'm like, oh, God, I'm glad I'm not there with you. And my kids are sort of, they're quite proud that their dad doesn't drink, so hopefully that rubs off on them a little bit, you never know. But as I said to them, like, if you put all the mistakes you've ever made in a jar, and then you took that jar and you put all the mistakes you made in alcohol into another jar, you'd find that that last jar is fuller than the first jar, because most of the mistakes you ever make or stupid things you do, usually you're on alcohol. So just trying to sort of, I don't know, be a good parent. I feel if you can have a drink, fine, you know what I mean? But my family, especially on my dad's side, has a bit of a history of producing binge drinkers. So, there's quite heavy evidence these days that alcoholism and that kind of thing is a genetic disposition.
So no doubt it's a genetic. It's passed down. I know my mother's family being Irish. They're not pissheads or anything like that. But if it's family get-togethers, people drank, and nobody got drunk, I've got to say. But I'm talking bottles of spirits, and I'm the same, mate. To be honest, man, I don't drink during the weekdays, but I can polish off 3/4 of a bottle of vodka or what have you, and wake up and function the next day. And I went and I had to go and see about getting a vitamin B12 injection, and she actually asked me, this nurse, she goes, it was fucking weird. She goes, how much do you drink? And I said, look, if I drink, it's, to your point, it's probably a binge drink, but I drink not regularly, but not rarely either. It's probably once every 2 or 3 weeks. And she goes, well, you actually categorise as an alcoholic. And I said, excuse me? Yeah. I had to take a check. And she goes, well, somebody who can do what you do.
4 drinks. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it, and honestly, it put me back because she was a registered nurse. I said, "Are you pulling my leg or what?" Like, I mean, completely functional, never bottomed out, what have you. Don't take anything else. Work my ass off, and occasionally I say to the wife, "All right, I'm watching YouTube clips tonight of Bolt Thrower and all the. We're the same vintage, so if I want to cut loose, it's by myself in front of YouTube watching videos. It's just what I do if I'm sort of wanting to zone out."
Until my wife gets to the point where she's just like, all right, I'm death metaled out, because we sort of, where we meet halfway is that we're both Tool fans. So that's kind of like our crossing point, and we're both artists. And she's a wonderful painter, and we both have an appreciation of art. And she's great with in Forgotten the Devil the One, the Gangs of Old Ladies film clip, that dead nun that you see, the possessed nun, is actually a very attractive friend of ours who's a hairdresser. And that footage is made in my backyard with just the makeup that my wife does, and like she's very good at it. And she drinks, I'd say she probably has 3/4 of a bottle every night or every second night. But the thing is, it never ever stops her from getting up, getting her stuff done, getting off to work, helping get the kid, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't impede on what she does. And the way I see it, because I'm pro-drug, my cousin died from GHB and I'm still pro-drug. As long as what you're doing isn't interfering with your daily functioning or other people's lives, or, you're not sort of suicide solution yourself, like, Ozzy Osbourne sort of said, you know what I mean? Like, taking yourself too far, as long as you're responsible and sort of, doing the right thing, I don't have a problem with anyone doing anything, and that's kind of, I guess, with my whole political ideals with the Greens and that sort of thing, is I think we could move in a lot of areas in relation to drug laws. I mean, they keep it quiet because the war on drugs is basically a war on illegal money and pushing people back more to get the prescriptions from the doctor.
It's about big pharma, that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Portugal, shit, it's more than a decade now. They made all drugs criminalised. And what they saw was a drop in crime, a drop in overdoses, a drop in robberies, a drop in...
It was a drop in the analogue adjacent, so it was a drop in things like rapes and murder and all of that sort of stuff that all of a sudden just went off. I'm not going to say they went off a cliff, but I know for a fact that happened. And look, I think I'm probably more on a political front, more of a libertarian from the perspective that if it's your body, whether it's abortion or drug use, it's all on you. Get educated, get informed, but it's actually your choice. Whatever it is, and that's why regulating things like I would never touch methamphetamine, but if someone wants to do it, I'd say, well, get educated, but it should come through a regulated source. Meaning,
I completely agree, dude. Back in my youth, I did what used to be methamphetamine, we call speed, is a completely different drug to ice. You know what I mean? They both might fall into the same category, but they are two very different substances. And I did speed like pretty solid for about 3 years, and the outsigns of that now is I have a very poor collapsed circulation. Like, it's very hard for doctors to find a vein when I have to go in and get a drip or a needle or anything like that. But ice, I tried once, and I straight up just realised that they're not the same drug. They're not, and that stuff is not good for you at all. You know what I mean? And there's just there's better ways, and we could have cleaner ways, pill testing, all that sort of stuff. I'm completely down with it. Yeah. I remember back before they regulated the R isomer that they used to make MDMA, hangers, as we used to call them, were absolutely completely different. Real methyl-oxymethamphetamine is so different to what you buy these days, which is usually MDE or MDA, not MDMA, and it is a completely different experience, a different high. Proper acid is one of my favorite drugs, you know what I mean? Because you have this beautiful mind expansion, you have a beautiful fucking night of laughter with your friends, and this, and I think it was Bill Hicks that said about the guy jumped off the building, and he's like, because he thought he could fly on acid, and it's like, fucking, why didn't you just take a run up from the ground? You don't see a duck take an elevator to the 12th floor, Like, that's just one less idiot, as he said. And I have to agree. And I think it was what's the Australian comedian, Jim Jeffries? I was watching him the other day, and he was talking about, how with like gun laws in America, and he was saying the thing is that someone always ruins it for the rest of us. And he said, because I take drugs like a fucking champion. But Jane stabbed her fucking kids on drugs and ruined it for all of us. And I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, he's a cack, yeah. But I think the other issue these days, and it's not so big here as it is in the States, but fentanyl. All of these powders and substances are cut with fentanyl, and that'll kill you.
That stuff is so... I watched a documentary on it because in Canada they've got a massive problem with it. And the sickness from fentanyl, from having a dose to going through withdrawals was like a 4.5 hour period. And I was like, what? What the fuck are you supposed to be? You got to have this shit 5 times a day or you're going to go through the Jonesian, you know what I mean? Like that's...
Yeah, it's horrific.
That's bad. That's really bad.
It's horrific. But this is where social networks need to be stronger. So if people are having difficult times, I understand that there's a percentage that have a genetic disposition to taking drugs and abusing alcohol. I get that. But I think for most people it's not the case. It's because they're trying to escape. They're trying to make themselves feel better because of abuse or some depression or something else that's going on in their lives. And this is where if we have a regulated source and a control and the government can tax it like they would with alcohol and tobacco, and then we get reinvest that money into health institutions to actually get people onto the right medication if they're taking the wrong medication, which is what alcohol is, the wrong medication for most of us.
I couldn't agree more. Like that's one of the that sentiment rings so true with me because to me, and I see ads. Because we have Netflix, but so ads to me when I go to the doctors or I'm at a waiting room and I see normal TV, I'm like, wow, I forgot this shit exists. And, you're watching a morning show and there'll be like 4 betting ads in a row and then 2 beer ads. And to me, alcohol was not good for me. You know what I mean? And I had some stupid times on the stuff and did some things that I'm not very proud of at all. And on drugs, I've never done anything bad. You know what I mean? I've had a good time, laughed my ass off, and never thought about doing anything like criminal or hurting anyone or anything like that. And I would dare say when I was younger, I got into drugs pretty quickly and pretty heavily because I didn't have the best home environment. I won't go into it, but And I think Marilyn Manson summed it up when he said, there's a hole in my soul that will fill with dope until we're feeling all right. And I understand what he means by that because, when you do have shit circumstances going on, and it doesn't matter whether you're the most sacrilegious, Jesus-following person on earth, if I gave you a whole bunch of heroin, you would feel really good because that's just what happens to your body, And people start abusing some of these substances, not out of just having a Friday night, I'll have a couple of these and, we'll play Trivial Pursuit and, feel okay and sort of wear off in the morning. But, they're trying to really fix a fractured part, like a schism of their personality, So, and that leads to all sorts of issues, and people losing work, losing employment, losing friends, losing themselves. And I think that, that's because of the fact that things are illegal. My cousin was out on GHB, which there's a chemical very similar to that actually is an S4 medication that they give here for shingles in Australia. And a lot of people abuse that, but they don't talk about it. I'm not going to name it because I don't want people to go out and get on it. But very similar effects to GHB, but without the not as dangerous, basically. And he died from what they call fetal asphyxia, which is where people basically coil up in a ball in the corner and pass out and vomit, pretty much like the dude from AC/DC. And that's how most overdoses kind of happen, and is aspiration. And a lot of that comes from that kind of is he all right? I'm not sure. We'll just keep an eye on him. But no one's really got that kind of, look, let's call an ambulance or call someone for help because we don't want to get busted. We don't want to have a criminal record for drugs. We don't want to have this, you know what I mean? And I think that in itself is an illicit problem because it breeds this line of fear where you actually are creating a danger point. And that's what I say to my kids: if you ever do anything like that or whatever else, and you're not feeling right or whatever, you just call Dad. You know what I mean? If anything like that, it's you don't be scared to go, hey, I took these things at a party, I'm feeling really sick. I'll come and get you. You know what I mean? Everything will be fine. Don't ever be scared to do that sort of thing. And I said, in fact, if you are going to do that, even just call Dad first and double check what you're doing, because
let me know where you're at. So as though I'm not going to come in and annoy you, but I might just so as though I know where you're at and I might park a block away or something.
Just smart stuff. You know what I mean? And like a really good example to me of where I find some people just mystify the world too much is when my daughter was at prep. This other mother came over to Loki. It might have been Kindy, one of the two, but in the little for school. And she goes, I just thought I'd let you know that the girls were having a conversation the other day about where babies came from. And Loki actually said that they come out of the vagina. And my wife said, that's where mine came from. Where did yours come from? And this mother was like absolutely shocked, horrified that we'd tell kids the truth about sexual reproduction. And I don't understand the whole, we still had Santa when they were little and those kind of things, but saying that babies are bought by storks and not just talking about the reality of human anatomy and all that sort of stuff, it's not going to get them into sex any quicker or any faster or anything like that. Educating people doesn't mean that you're arming people. And I think that's a really important thing that relates not only to drugs, but absolutely everything, and even religion. I got a friend who's like very anti-religion, and to me, I said I tolerate all religions, but a lot of religions actually preach intolerance, which is kind of hard. But as he said, and I think there's a great Tool song about it called "Prison Sex" that is actually about the idea of people being taught religious ideology before they're old enough to even realise that it's a form of sort of mind control, and telling people that there's a God and people go to heaven, and if you don't do stuff. I remember when I was really little, because my nana was Roman Catholic, and she used to go to church on a Sunday, and I remember being like, I must have been little because my parents divorced when I was like 4 or 5. But I remember being really little, and I was scared to dig in the garden in case I dug too deep down to where the devil and all the skeletons were. And my wife was brought up an atheist, and when I tell her that, she's just like, it's just so shocking to think. She goes, Santa's one thing, but giving people the idea that there's this person who's watching everything you do and that is going to punish you and stuff. And to me, I guess that was. Whoever thought of it was a bit of a bright spark, because back before we had the internet and CCTV, they found a way to make people think that they were being watched, and to try and sort of get them to coerce to what they considered to be the right way to do things. But also with that, you've got a lot of line sitters. It's funny because that footballer Israel Folau or something like his name is.
Israel Folau, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. When he came out with the whole anti-gay thing a couple of years ago, this guy cracked me up. He put up a GoFundMe project, and it was a stick man. And basically he wanted to had a picture out of a stick man with a cannon shooting rainbows over another stick man. And it was, please help me raise money towards my gay laser cannon. And his idea was, and he had one stick man at the end, the scientist, and then a cannon, and then rainbows, and Israel Folau was the other stick man. And he was trying to raise money to build a gay laser cannon to shoot at Israel Folau to make him gay. And that was like one of the funniest social media things I think I've ever seen. But, I mean, he quoted parts of the Bible about man shall not lay down with another man. In that same part of the Bible he quoted, it also said that men shouldn't have their hair cut short on the sides, which is what that dude's haircut is. And it's also very interesting too, because if you actually go a little bit further, when the Bible was translated back into the King James version from the older German and Polish versions, the word that was translated across wasn't lay down with men the way that they were a woman. It was lay down with children. It actually referred to pedophilia, not homosexuality. And I think that's a really big thing that a lot of the religions somewhere lost along the way. We're sort of completely tolerant to all that sort of stuff, not pedophilia, But I just can't believe the amount of acceptance, or just the way, like, I can't. What's that? George Pell, he got out of jail. That guy should still be in jail right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have some I vote Green, but at the same time, I'm a bit all over the place, because I'm also a huge supporter of the death penalty. I think if it's been proven beyond reasonable doubt, especially with the science we have these days with DNA and everything, that you raped or hurt a child, like the guy.
Yeah, rape and pedophilia, to me, are cut and dried cases of you need to be dead. Dude,
yeah. If you have you have DVDs anymore because of streaming, but if you had a DVD player that broke, you don't put it in the cupboard. You put it in the bin because it's broken, and you go to Kmart and buy another one for $30. And I don't want to make human life sound cheap, but to me, committing acts like that, you are fucking broken. And I'm sorry, but even keeping you alive in jail is a waste of money. And that life, to me, isn't something that you deserve anymore at all. And so, yeah, that's a pretty right-wing thing, I guess, of someone that sort of votes Greens.
You sound libertarian. You sound like me. I'm not saying I am that, but I'm saying that when I look at my ideology and I go, which one do I match with? It's very tough to say left and right. It's sort of, it's all over the shop, like what you say. Yeah. I'm economically conservative, but I am socially I hate using the word progressive because it means something different now, but I'm socially, I would have probably a lot in common with, say, the average Greens voter. But from an economic perspective, have a lot in common with, say, someone who votes Liberal National. And, the thing is, that's the thing about living in a democracy. But look, the pedophilia thing, have you seen these movements? I don't know if it's still active, but they were called Clover people or something. It was on Twitter. Sea lover, child lover, Clover. It was fucking movement to normalise pedophilia. And I was like, man, if you want to do that, there's going to be lynching because... There's no way.
And I don't understand. Well, to me, that's where, like, because I've read some psychological books when I was at uni, and one of the books was, Freud talks a lot about sexuality and that sort of stuff. And I can't remember what book I was reading, but it was talking about, it was a criminal psychologist, and he was talking about the review cases with pedophiles, and that their psychology was broken, and that they were stuck in like a point in their mind where, to them, what was attractive and sexual and alluring was stuck when they were like 5, and it kind of, and basically he went on to explain that even he agreed that these people are broken. You can't fix it, you can't mend it. There's no way around it, and sort of. And then even just things like, there's a Friendly Geordies video. I do love Jordan Shanks. He's one of the most well-researched media people out there. And, with the whole Barilaro lawsuit and that sort of stuff, he's one of those people that we need people like that in a democracy, people that actually will stand up and show that the people that are in power are just pigs at a trough and not actually, leading by example and pork barreling, And there's a video that just absolutely shows without a doubt that Gladys Berejiklian had someone in her organisation that was known for child sex offences and basically gave them an appointed job in an administrative sort of promotional role and sort of hid them away. And as he says in the video, this is on your public money. You know what I mean? And it's basically a convicted child sex offender. And it's like, I don't see how there's this room for any of that, like we've got tolerance and love to a degree, but I also think that we've gotten a little bit soft with some things, and people go, but what if it's the wrong person? And it's like, yeah, but those days are very gone. My brother-in-law is actually a very high up homicide detective in Australia, and the amount that you can be traced these days, you would not believe, not just from your phone signal, but when they know where you were on a certain night, they can pretty much, with all the cameras from the service stations and traffic cameras and everywhere, trace just about your exact movements. You know what I mean? Like, and recreate like a video path that shows that you were there at this time and doing.
That's how they got Tiali Palmer's murderer. That psycho that killed that young lady in Logan.
That, with the child, with the pregnancy and all that. Was that one?
That's the one. That's the one.
That guy, I'm sorry, and I'm all for the old days, should be in one of those, like the rib cages, the gallows cages, where they actually leave the person up there for everyone to watch for a few months. And it's like, what's the giblet? That's what it's called. And so what's that dead guy up there for? And it's like, he did this. I think that we really have lost a little bit of that kind of strength in carrying through on some of the promises that we talk about. We talk about keeping our children safe, and we talk about being harsh on crimes, and yet people do these things, and they go to prison, and then either because they're threatened by other inmates, they're kept in sort of isolation, and they've got TVs, they're fed, and it's just like the last thing that person deserves is another breath.
I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Prince Andrew then, won't it?
The whole Epstein thing, man, how disgusting is that? It's just absolutely vile, and you can sort of go, conspiracy theory, but it's like that island is the weirdest. Like, even if you take the whole thing away from it, just looking at pictures of that.
It's all facts. No, it's all like that young lady, Guffray, I can't remember her first name, but she lives in Cairns now, Townsville. The American girl who's at the centre of the whole thing, who's suing him. She now lives in Cairns, you know that?
Cyril or Michelle or whatever her name is.
Guffray, surname Guffray. I can't remember her first name. Virginia, is it? Virginia Guffray? Anyway, I mean, you can tell when someone's lying. She ain't lying. I mean, something happened, and that island was definitely young girls are trafficked there, and then they couldn't get off.
Yeah, there was definitely some strange stuff, and I mean, and that too even pinpoints. I watched this great documentary just after Michael Jackson died, and it didn't call him out. They just went to his house and showed you his house, and there was this fucking room that was done up like Peter Pan.
Yeah,
and it had all these beds in it. And it had double-sided mirrors, so from the outside you could walk around the outskirts of that room and look through into that room, with double-sided mirrors. And the door to that room locked from the inside with like fucking 6 or 7 big severe-ass deadlocks and bolts, and you know what I mean? And it's just like, I'm sorry, but that's, you know what I mean? It's like if you rented a house and you found a dungeon and you opened it up and downstairs there was chains and handcuffs and blood over a sink. You'd have to go, some fucking weird shit is going on here, you know what I mean? It's just not normal. And the room that they showed, and they didn't say anything. They just showed you this guy's house. And there was no way at the end of that documentary that I didn't think that the guy that lived there had some sort of strange sexual delusion for children. Do you know what I mean? Like, absolutely no doubt in my mind, because, I've got a house here I've renovated with my 2 kids. There is no fucking way you would have a room like that unless you were up to no good. You know what I mean? And the thing is, as humans, we all know each other. People go, how could the Nazis commit such crimes? And it's like, we've all got it inside us. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all got that streak of evil inside us.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson says that exact thing. He goes, if you were at the height of Stalin's atrocities or Idi Amin's or Hitler's, the thing is, look to the person next to you. They'd be participating in it. It's not that you'd be there and the only person not doing this. It's evil. It's the yin and the yang. It's straight down the line, and it's in you.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. I actually do quite like Jordan Peterson as well, and I've laughed at some of the YouTube sort of videos I put together with him. And he was doing a public speaking thing, and afterwards, this journalist said, there was quite a few Nazis here. What do you think about that? And he said, I don't like Nazis. That's all he had to say.
They've used him as a straw man for years, the hard left, and it's just bullshit.
Big time. It's just bullshit. And I actually watched the other day him and I can't remember the Jewish guy's name. It was like Weberstein or something like that.
Eric Weinstein.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. Brilliant evolutionary biologist,
And they had this awesome chat. And him and Peterson, like, they had been talking for hours, and they said, do we want to get down to the Hitler thing? And Jordan Peterson said, well, I'm not really sure because I've been talking for so long. I'm worried I might say something really stupid, But they basically both agreed on the whole principle of how Hitler's kind of reign worked and why everyone went along with it. And that kind of whole, doesn't matter who the people were, why that kind of thing can happen. And it hasn't just happened there. I mean, Pol Pot, in Cambodia and Genghis Khan, it's happened a lot throughout history, you know what I mean? And it's just one of the things you can't turn around and deny that in all of us, from, since we climbed out of the trees, there's still that streak of flight or fight. And depending on how that's motivated sometimes, in the wrong ways, people can get quite aggressive. Road rage is a great example. I've had people do absolutely fucking ridiculous things in front of me and get all angry and stuff. And it's not till you get out of the car and they're like, I'm 6'1" and, tattoos from my head to my toes. All of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, never mind. And it's kind of like, I only wound up my window just because I wanted to hear what they had to say. I never get upset on the road like that, you know what I mean? And I think it's a really big show because I've had even old ladies giving you the finger and stuff in their car, and it's just like, wow, that rage just seems to be implanted in people, and it can come out for some of the most bizarre and simple reasons. And I didn't even read what it was today because I was pretty flat out at work, but I flicked across to open a page to search something up, and the news headline was something about the police had just broken up a 40-man brawl somewhere in Australia, and some guy may lose his left hand.
In Runcorn. He was in Runcorn. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. South Brisbane had it again. And just, as we were saying earlier, you don't have to sort of go far to find evil these days. And I think it will always be with us. I don't think that the devil did it. I don't think the devil made it do it, and I don't think God cares. Ricky Gervais makes me laugh when they talk about insurance and they say, ring God, did you do this? And he's like, I know I was in Africa that day giving AIDS to babies. And I find that line hilarious. And I like him as a comedian because he goes right up to that line. And a friend of mine who's very social, she just graduated university for social political degree, and is working in arts and with the Aboriginal movement to sort of for Indigenous people sort of thing. And she's like, oh, no, he crosses the line too much, And I was just like, oh, yeah, no. I said, but the thing is, it's comedy. He's not actually getting on a loudspeaker saying we should do any of these things or, trying to actually provoke anything other than, especially even when he was at the Golden Globes that he hosted all those years in a row.
Oh, he just eviscerated them at the Golden Globes. Hilarious.
That one when he said, he doesn't kill himself, obviously, like Jeffrey Epstein. And then when he's like, oh, don't laugh, I know he's all your friend. And I was just like... I'm sorry,
I know he was your friend.
I was your friend. He is fucking gold. And I do appreciate a good comedian. And I love him for that sort of can push those whole ethics of if there really was a God, and don't tell me he's got some design plan because, there's some fucking horrible stuff going on in the world, and if there was an enlightened know-all being, then he would make things a little bit nicer for everyone.
It's not a God that's reactive in the sense that it's human. A God doesn't have human characteristics. It's not something you can do this to and pray for something to happen. I mean, there is an energy in prayer. There's undeniable that that's the case. But the whole idea that I'm with you insofar as I've sort of coming to this perspective that, when you stare into the abyss stares back. It's just this mute entity that exists, no doubt, but it's passive. And it's actually up to us. It's actually up to us to create the world we want.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it is. We've got the act. We can all do it. We can right now, I mean, it would never happen, but I'm saying tomorrow we could all wake up and wars would be over. All religions would agree to disagree and collectively not try to murder each other. And
that'd be awesome if they could agree to disagree, because they don't. Do you know what I mean?
Because my Sky Fairy said this at this time, and yours is this and that. And it's look. I know. Look, I work for a religious institution. I've got to say, but look, it's we're all fairly secular. I mean, you talk about Catholic. I grew up a hardcore Catholic because I had to go to mass every Sunday, a bit like what you're talking about with your grandma.
I did that. Communion, is that what we do when we're young?
Yeah.
And
reconciliation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you grew up as a Catholic then, yeah.
I did that stuff, and I was about 10, and I said to my mum, because I'd been reading a lot of science books, and I said to Mum, look, the Bible stories just don't weigh up evolutionary. It makes sense to me, and I don't believe that there's a God. And she said, yeah, that's all right, but it makes Nana happy, so do it for Nana. And I found that to be horrible, because that's the wrong reason to be going to an institution like a Catholic church to make your Nana happy, you know, like I'd rather give Nana some flowers, or, you know, play a game with Nana, or do something fun with Nana. Nana's dead now, but, you know, I just don't think that going to church because it made Nana happy was any reason to have anything to do with the Catholic Church. So,
I don't think, I've got to say, sorry, I don't think the pathway to God is through organised religion. Okay, if there is a God, I don't think it's through organised religion at all. It's at its chance, and it doesn't work in that respect. You know,
send more money now. Yeah. I agree, and to me, like, the universe is just so vast, and the more we study physics and stuff, it just gets weirder. You know what I mean? It just doesn't behave the way we think it will. There's some strange experiments that they've done with lasers and atomic projection, and there was a really interesting one they were doing with photons that were supposed to act in a certain way.
I know this.
And when they observed the experiment, it acted like it was supposed to. And when they didn't watch the experiment, it didn't behave like it was supposed to. And that sort of ties in with, like, Einstein said that, you know, reality is an illusion, although albeit a very
it feels real. And what you just articulated then is actually the basis for all meditation, which is that observational capacity to just be. And the more you can observe as opposed to be in, so separate, you know the whole mantra of you are not your thoughts, separate yourself from your thoughts, which is what meditation allows you to do. I just find it impossible. I have to swim to get anywhere near that and feel almost buggered afterwards.
And I find that depression, okay, so we've all got this rear view mirror, you know, where sometimes you stop and you adjust the rear view mirror and you have that little bit of paranoia where you sort of just double check your life, like, you know, just to make sure everything's all right.
Sure. Yeah.
To me, depression is when you stop looking through the windshield and you start putting all of your focus on that rear view mirror. That's where things can, your perspective goes very askew. You know what I mean? You fall into paranoid delusions. You fall into sort of down states. You're focusing on all the bad times, and you know, you're not looking through the front window anymore. You're looking backwards. And I find that swimming, that's awesome. For me, I take the dog for a walk.
Sometimes I do that too.
Music, as you know, I mean, David Anderson's in our band from Soilwork, and it's funny because the song Stelfagel, which is Steel Eagle in Norse, really lifts me up, and I just love the beat of it. I love the energy of it, and it's funny because me and him have some pretty deep psychological chats like we are now. And he's a doctor, as you know, and stuff. So we go really deep sometimes, and sort of talk about functioning and, you know, the best way to do certain things. And that's what my wife says to me, because she can pick straight away when I'm sort of, you know, feeling a bit slopey and, you know, that's sort of on that sort of wrong sort of feeling. And she just goes, take the dog for a walk. And, you know, so I get up, all right. First couple of houses, I'm like, oh yeah, come on, dog. And then, before I know it, I've separated. You know, like what you say when you're swimming, that separation of you and your thoughts, they kind of float away like bubbles, and I'm just sort of in this, I don't know, I'm in this moment with me and the dog, and, you know, watching him sniff the grass and just enjoying the air and the trees, and just letting things go past my eyes, whether it's flying birds or cars or just being. You know what I mean? Like, not just existing. And I think that's what mantra and meditation is that stopping being a person, being a named object, being an actual reconciled individual, and just being a living, breathing sort of thing. To me, that's that point of that's what you're trying to achieve with meditation. You know, like just that state of just being. And even, like, you know, taking a dog for a walk, only 5 or 10 minutes, and then as I come back through the front door, it's almost like coming back out of like some sort of prayer or through, because it's like, oh, yeah, unclip the dog, and I start talking to my wife, and all of a sudden everything comes back. I'm thinking about stuff again. But that moment that I've taken the dog for a walk was just fantastic. It was just me and the dog, and just I think. And like Jordan Peterson, I completely agree with the man when he says, and they give him shit about it when he says, if you want to start changing the world, get up and make your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And people are like, what are you talking about? And it's just like, to me, it makes so much sense. I make my bed in the morning, and I on the weekends we'll vacuum, we'll start doing the washing, and getting those sort of chores done and stuff, because tidy house, tidy sort of life, and just I don't know, you kind of I completely see the simplicity in saying start small and start.
Yeah, how can you change the world if you can't clean your bloody room?
That's it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can't make your bed every morning, but you want to go out there and be a crusader for this and that sort of. What do they call it? It's like
social justice warriors, or
virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. Oh, it's terrible, mate. Yeah, they live in the West, and have running water, hot water, access to meals 3 times a day, a lot more than that, because we've got an obesity epidemic in the West. Yet they want to try and change the world. We've never lived in better times, is the truth of the matter, yet we want to pretend that it's the worst time of all time.
Just how lucky they are. We have a house. Yeah, we're probably about less than a K. It's probably a 10-minute walk from here to the waterfront. We got
you Bayside. You're Bayside, are you?
Yeah. Bayside. Yeah. Well, I'm in Wynnum. Simon's in the same suburb. We're both near the golf course, and it's just we got a big yard. We've put a lot of work into it over the years. My wife's got a very green thumb, and it's gone from we on Gumtree for ages used to go and load the car up with big rocks that were free, and sort of lined all the gardens. And I remember we'd be driving back, and the Subaru was so weighed down it's just about touching the road, sort of thing. But all those years, it's been like in the house nearly 10 years now, and it's paid off. And we have a beautiful big deck we've extended on the back with sort of French doors and all that. And I say to the kids, you don't understand just how lucky we are. And, my son thinks being rich is, and I've actually got a client of mine at work who owns 2 Lamborghinis, a McLaren, and 2 helicopters. And I took him out to his house, and we went for a helicopter ride. And he's like,
not
"Wow,
Mick Doohan, is it?"
No, it's not Mick Doohan. And he's like, "Wow, that guy's rich." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's the loveliest guy." And that's what he sees as being rich. And I said, "But the thing is, sweetie, you have to understand that you have clothes, you have a computer, you have access to the internet, you have 3 meals a day, you have snacks in the cupboard, you go to the skate park. You are rich, mate. You've just really got to get it in perspective of what the rest of the world is like, and just how lucky you are to be here." And it's such a random choice of just where you're born. Like I'm so glad that I'm not born in some of the third world countries, and
in almost anywhere in Africa with the issues that they've got to deal with there, especially if you're a female.
I've actually in Vegas Rhythm Kings in Dearly Beheaded, you'll see there's a 5th guy that is only in that film clip. His name was Kyle, a lovely little Christian guy. We used to work together, and he was South African, and he wanted to go back and see why his parents had got out of there. And he went back for this holiday, and he came back, and he was never, ever really quite the same again. And I said to him, like, it seemed to have sort of solemned you up a little bit. And he said the day that he got there, the front newspaper was about the police had finally apprehended a guy who had been breaking into people's houses and putting their children in the oven and, like, turning the oven on if they didn't pay him money, kind of thing. And I was just like, what?
Well, South Africa's a failed state. And look, I love rugby. Believe me, I used to write rugby articles and stuff and cover rugby for Bond Union for the Bulletin. But it's difficult to watch South Africa, the rugby side, the Springboks, knowing the absolute misery that the vast majority of the people in that country are going through, black and white, by the way. But the farm murders and just the absolute poverty that a lot of the black population live in, and it's the lack of economic, access to economic resources, and the fat catting that goes on. As soon as somebody's, it's horrific.
And then they just siphon off, because I was reading a little bit about why this last outbreak had happened, and the people wanted this guy out of jail who's siphoned off like $9 gazillion
Zuma.
dollars or something. Yeah, and it was
Zuma,
just like,
yeah. Former Prime Minister, or President.
What did he do for you? You know, I don't understand it.
Well, he's a Zulu, you see. He's part of their, you know, it's extremely tribal, and he's that ruling tribe, and so it's just like, you know, in that respect, you're attacking part of their family, if you like. They're us, you're attacking me, and no matter what he's done wrong, we'll met out the justice. You can't, you know. But it's like, well, we've got laws. This is what civilization is all about. Rule of common law. It's what the Magna Carta happened for. You know, so as though feudal kings just couldn't, and lords just couldn't come and take the common man's property. You know, I mean, I speak to a lot of musicians, not a lot, a few musicians in South Africa, and the only message I have for them, dear old Robin Ferguson, I love Robin, said to her, just leave. I'm sorry, but like, just come here, you know, start over again. I know it's tough, but, you know, it's, unless you got tons of money and your bloody dad's a diamond miner or something like that, I just don't see how you can survive there long term. And I do know people there. It's not like I'm talking out my ass. Like, you know, it's just there's nothing like what we've got here or in Canada or in New Zealand or the UK insofar as access to social security.
The guy who I watched was a YouTube guy. I can't remember who he was. I've never seen him before. And he was a very nice guy, and he's like, don't get me wrong, he goes, I love South Africa, it's a beautiful country and stuff. And then he went on to explain a bit of what's happening, and he said there's a lot of videos I'm not going to show you because it's too awful. And then he went on to explain if you're going to get a gun, and started showing people how to use weapons and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's the level we're at. But, you know, this gentleman is basically, you know, sort of sounded like the voice of reason, and the voice of reason is saying, okay, it's probably a good idea to arm yourself. And he's like, you know, for everyone that's asking me if I'm okay, I live in an armed compound, so it's all good, you know. And it's like, wow, you know, like that's pretty full on, you know.
It's lawless. There's no way to enforce the law either, because the police are under-resourced and overstretched, and I mean, that's why they're all trying to do.
One of the videos that he actually showed that made me laugh, he was like, and this is our police force, the guy was holding 2 shotguns, and he circled it, and he was holding them under his arms like they were broomsticks, pointed at the other police officer while they were talking. And then he stopped to hand him something, and the guy they were questioning just ran away. And he was kind of like, oh, he's gone. And they both come around this side of the van to look. And while he did that, the other guy jumped out of the van and ran the other way. And they both got away. And I was just like, it was almost like watching the Three Stooges. And it was like, this is the police force. So, yeah, you know, we've got it very, very good over here. And I think that's one of the things that, because, you know, David's from Sweden. They're a pretty forward sort of country as well, democratically, and they, you know, they take care of their people. I think it was Patrick Jensen that I was interviewing from the Haunted. And you know, I said to him, "How are things?" And he goes, "Oh, look, man, I'm Swedish. I can't really complain. We've got our problems, and you know, people have mental health issues." He goes, "But we live in Sweden, so." You know, we have a really good public health system. We get looked after. We've got, you know, like you guys, like, you know, unemployment sort of benefits and all that sort of thing. And, you know, when you have that in a country, basically when you look after your society, you have a better chance. You know, your society stands a better chance. It's like the chemist down near me does the methadone program. And a lot of people have a bit of an askew view and have a crack at them because they think that they bring all the junkies into town and yada, yada. And I've tried to explain to people, I said, you don't understand. If they didn't have this methadone program, those people would be climbing in your lounge room window at night to get something to pawn, to get heroin. That methadone program is actually doing you a lot of good, and it's actually very cheap and is a much better option than what the other option is, which is, you know, not supporting these people at all, which kind of ties in what we're talking about with drugs and that earlier, you know.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And, things could be better for all of us, and I think that's one of the reasons. Like we've got it very good here. I've got a lovely wife, we've got great kids, beautiful house. So when I make music, it's got to be extreme because what people call extreme metal to me is just normal metal. You know, it's like normal music. And
same, yeah.
I kind of like, I guess from Iron Maiden's Seventh Son and Cradle of Filth and stuff like that, I love conceptual stuff, and that's where Demonic Drug Pig was a little bit autobiographical, because there was a stage there in Vietnam where I was hitting the chemist up, because you don't need scripts in Vietnam, and with my medical knowledge I got myself really fucking loose, but also accidentally drank shower water, not thinking because I was high as fuck, happy on holidays.
Oh, yeah.
And was ill for quite a few months, and that sort of recuperation took probably a good 18 months, and a lot of other sort of medications to get back to a working point. And so Demonic Drug Pig was a little bit about myself and just about how sometimes you can, even without meaning to, just, lie to yourself. There's a line in there, I think, where I say, Lord of Lies, Weaver of Deceit. I'm talking about myself because, you lie to yourself. Am I doing too much? No, you're not doing too much. Really? I'm eating like 40, 50 fucking different pills a day. No, you're fine, And that's the thing. You lie to yourself. And then there's that journey back to, I guess, sobriety is trying to find yourself again can be really difficult. It's not like as easy as like, oh, I'll just stop that, I'm completely fine.
No, I know exactly what you're saying about that journey back to sobriety, and that's where people need the help. Because I don't think nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to turn my life to hell and become an addict. It doesn't fucking happen. People are fools if they think people go, yes, I'm an addict. It doesn't happen. It's those pathways back to society and that, that harsh judgment that people don't need. Sorry, I know I interrupted you in your thing there. I just thought it was so important to make that point because it's that judgment that needs to be removed,
It's true. And that's where when I say I'm pro-drug and people go, how can you be pro-drug? I'm like, well, look, my cousin died. I've done lots of drugs and I still think that, the system could be better in relation to those things. And so then when I thought, okay, how am I going to write this into a story? I came up with a Demonic Drug Pig story, which is a really loose tale about a heroin-addicted exorcist priest from the Vatican who's chasing basically a drug demon that eats people who are high. And
this is a novella, isn't it? Because I've read it.
Yeah, this novella, yeah.
But that's called For God or the Devil Are One, isn't it?
That's the one about the witch.
Oh, okay, yeah, I liked it. I got to say, your writing's good because I'm a writer too. I ghostwrite biographies, and apart from journalism, but I enjoyed it. And you're the only person doing it that I'm aware of.
David absolutely loves it. He said straight away when Demonic Drug Pig came out, because he was just one of the voices at the end on that saying chemicals. So it was like him, Carl Willits from Bowl Thrower, Francesca Palla from Flesh God Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And Squiz is the one singing chemicals from King Parrot. And David sort of read the book and then got back in touch and was like, oh, you should have got me to play guitar. And I was like, well, do you want to sort of join up? And he was like, yeah. And then we've been sort of hooked up like that ever since. And, Forgotten the Devil Are the Ones, the story about the witch who's sort of in the religious
okay. I read them when Dicey sent through. I read them. Sorry, I know I'm a compelled reader, so I'm always reading something. So things just sort of blend into one. But two things. I remember how I was very impressed with the standard of the writing, the way in which you tied up the story and the narrative, plot narrative, and the fact that you were doing it because, as you well know, mate, it's very hard to make money doing anything to do with literature and journalism. Oh, yeah. It's virtually, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but there's two ways. You can work for Nine Media, Fairfax, or News Limited, or you can do what I'm doing, which is do content, be a writer, like a communications consultant. I don't see you can do it. And all of my writing, to your point, I want to make money from it too, but how the hell do you do it?
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing with Gangs of Old Ladies. Everything's free. If you go to the services tab on our Facebook page, everything we put out, the novellas, the songs, the artwork, it's all there just for free download worldwide. Where it's on Spotify and stuff, but there's no actual selling of CDs or records of vinyl or anything like that. The books are just there. I think they're under EPUB, or you can bring them up as a PDF document or whatever.
EPUB was easy. I did that, in the Kindle. Yeah,
it's just made for enjoyment, basically. And it's quite interesting because my mother-in-law reads them, and she's a fairly straight-laced woman in her 60s from Canberra. who now lives up here in Queensland with us, and we got on really well. And so I said, "Oh, would you read these for me?" And she came back and she said, "The first one," she goes, "that epilogue with the door closing and the priest saying, 'Blessed are the sick.'" She goes, she goes, really great horror writing. I was like, "Oh, okay." And then as we've progressed, Rape by Ghost, she says to me, she goes, I enjoyed it. She goes, it was a simple little read. She goes, it was far out, like the concept was, right out there. She goes, but she goes, it's still very fathomable. And I've actually, it's only a handful, but I've had a handful of mostly girls and Soilwork fans too, that have gotten back in touch and gone, "Hey, is the next book ready yet?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've got like a draft." And they're like, "Can you send it through? I won't show anyone." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, you're enjoying the books?" And they're like, "Yeah, the music's a bit heavy for me, but I love the books and I love the universe you've created and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. Well, someone's reading it, you know what I mean? And it was kind of like, okay, when that started getting, people listening to it. And the same with Gangs of Old Ladies. As soon as people start sort of enjoying it, that's kind of why I do it. I do it because I like it. And
I've got to say, I love in the novellas, I love the local references, like, because, being from around here, West End and the Gabba and stuff, like, because you get sick of reading about Melbourne places and Kilda or whatever in some local books, that's local. Yeah. Talking about Melbourne, nothing against Melbourne, but I wouldn't have a bloody clue, but when you start talking about West End and the Gabba and stuff, it's like, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I try and incorporate that, and I sort of, because we are here in Wynnum, and that's one of the things with me and Rick Ross, which to me, like, for him to join was huge, because Leprosy, as I said earlier, was one of the albums I learned to sing to. And I remember when Massacre's first album came out, and Camberley's
Classic. Yeah, heavy. Yeah.
And then, sort of someone showed Rick the thing, and we got in touch with each other, and he's like, "Hey, I want to start doing solos." And I was like, "What do you want to join full time?" He was like, "Yeah, absolutely." He was keen as. And I sort of email him back and forth, and just pictures of the Bayside and stuff like that. And he was showing his partner. He's like, "Oh, you've got to see this guy that I've joined the band in Australia," and he's showing him, the house and the kids, and how beautiful it is over there and stuff, and realizing that Australia is a really beautiful place. And also, like, it was funny because my mum would mention Wynnum Manly, used to be called back when I was a kid, and I'd always hear this Wynnum Manly, and it had this weird ring to it. I don't know what it is. When you just hear a word and for some reason there's something about that word, and it just turned out to be the place that eventually me and my wife would settle and buy a house. And I just find that so bizarre, because it was always this word. What is it about this word? And then it ended up being the place that we were married beforehand and had both the kids. One was born in Cairns and one on the Gold Coast. But then when we got the house, we were looking around here and we got in just at the right time too, I'll say, on the market.
Oh my God. Thank God we got in too, yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah. This house we're in now, I reckon will be $300,000 more than what we paid for it back then. It's just gone insane. And the street I'm on too, the big old blocks that were about 800, 900 square metres with one big old Queenslander. Now, as soon as those people sort of die out and the children sell it on, there's 3 houses on that same space.
Yeah, I know.
These massive mansions that have big double garages and there's no yard. You see when the whole thing's built, there's like 2 square metres of grass at the back and a little like pool and a courtyard, but then the rest of it's house. And I'm just like, how do you keep a house that big clean? It's hard to keep a small house clean, I imagine they must have a lot of like this space in between things. I'm not
it's
sure.
It's like that at Tennyson. They're doing it now. They're knocking down all the old Queenslanders and putting these. I'm not going to call them McMansions because they're nicer than that, but I just don't get it. I like my mother's family were at Wooloowin, growing up at Wooloowin. They're out at Sanford now. But just remember those old Queenslanders and the character.
This place built in '67, and when we moved in, the kitchen was old. It still had the linoleum style bench tops. And the cupboards were that bright yellow enamel with the steel.
It's either lime green or bright yellow, isn't it? It's one of the two.
Yeah, same as my nana's kitchen in Ergon. And I said to my wife, I said, well, what if we keep the old kitchen and repaint it? And we bought blue gum, which actually is red when it's stained. Or not stained, when it's clear, it comes out red. We got these bench tops ordered, and the guy came to install them, and he was just blown away. He goes, normally I'm putting these in these, soulless modern houses. He goes, this is beautiful, this old school kitchen that you go sort of, just put new steel handles on it and a bit of grey paint, white and grey. I was just really impressed with the kitchen, and we got sort of old polished floors, and it's just I don't know. I love old houses. It's stucco. Underneath the house, there's an old crate of stuff that's probably been there since the 70s. When we got the carpet laid, my wife said that there was newspaper in between the lino. She took some photos, the lino and the old pink carpet that was here, and it was from 1971. And it still had like the ads where they used to draw the product, and it was like Thunderstone, 79 cents, and and the lino itself was this amazing like rose petal design, and just it trips me out to think that's what's actually under the carpet. But no, we sort of like places have character, and I find new places can be pretty, but there's preservation of the old as well. So. But it kind of falls on both sides. I wouldn't mind getting rid of it, like the wading pool here that everyone wants to keep because it was built in the 50s, and I think it's gross because when you go out to the Redcliffe Lagoon, that's awesome. So I'm sort of for and against, like some things I'm like, yeah, that's great. Other things I'm like, I've been in the wading pool. It's very irky. I think we should get rid of it and get something better. So, not a very popular sort of post on Win and What, but put it out there. And, but yeah, I love the area. And, so to be working with people from overseas like Rick and Dave, and it's cool the way they sort of view Australia, because I think Florida, where death metal sort of grew, and David's off in Sweden, you know what I mean, and Europe, you had that sort of fantasized idea, because like my family on my father's side is from Copenhagen, and you think, Denmark and all these countries, but then you actually realize the reality of like just how much space people don't have, and how on top of
it's freezing as well in winter. That's the other thing.
That's the other thing. It's the cold, like
Europe sucks in winter.
But our winter is their summer. You know what I mean? Like,
I think our winter's even warmer, much warmer than their summer.
It was. I think it was. I can't remember what it's called, but it's an Icelandic or Norwegian show about like the guy becomes Thor, and it's got the trolls and the giants in it on Netflix, and they watched it with the English translations and I watched it with subtitles in Norse, which was kind of funny because that whole language just sounds like swallowing. And the funny thing was it went into summer and they were still wearing like big puffy ass jackets with a jumper underneath and another jumper underneath that, and it's like, come out and enjoy the summer air, and they're like, wow, like that's what I'd wear to the snow, and that's like perfect summer attire for hiking up a mountain and stuff. So yeah, the temperatures are a deceptive thing. As my wife said, you go, you'd love it, and every winter I'm like, it's cold.
No, we can't. I can barely stand Sydney in winter, to be honest with you. It's and I went to a boarding school in Sydney, and I forget it. It leaves you. The cold leaves you. Nowadays, I'm not saying I can handle it, but I went to that bloody awful Spring Loaded festival up at Sandstone Point, out there at Sandstone Point and Bribie Island. And, mate, that wind shear, I got exposure because I just wore my long sleeve T-shirt and shorts. It was so cold, I felt physically sick. And I'm someone who I thought I could handle the cold, but apparently I can't.
Yeah, I went to, I was born in Bundaberg, and then we kind of lived north, and I did high school in Gladstone. And in 93, I came down here on the school holidays in June, July, so winter, and stayed at a place out in Toombul. And, or was it Chermside? One or the other.
Close enough.
I never felt so fucking cold in my life. And I think it was like 2 degrees that morning or something. And the guy I was staying with was a truck driver, and he was like, "Are you coming out in the morning running?" Because I wanted to see all the suburbs. And he's like, "What do you want to come when I come back later after Smoko?" And I'm like, I'll see you at Smoko. I just couldn't get out of bed. I'd never felt anything that cold, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I've adapted. to it now. And my wife, it's funny how you adapt because she's from Canberra, but she gets cold here, And,
you adapt. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. But beautiful place to live, and I sort of do enjoy being able to do that whole kind of, just a local spin on things. Just put a little bit of yourself into your work too. I think that's what makes for good writing or for good music or good anything is you have to put a little bit of yourself in there. If you don't do that, then it's.
I've done the same thing, mate. Yeah, I've in my books. I haven't released them yet, but they're podcast memoirs, effectively. But there's so many times where I've done interviews where I've been when I used to work for Telstra. I used to be an account executive for Telstra, and I'd be in Cairns, flying back or something like that, and I'd be talking about having to get to the Watain show or something like that, and how nervous I felt. The flight was delayed and I really wanted to go. Just shit like that sort of links in. And I've worked in the sunny coast for years too, so I was talking about going out for not a surf but a body surf before talking to Blitz from Overkill, this sort of thing. And because I had terrible anxiety back in those days, and how it sort of links in. Like that was like my second ever conversation with to your point, someone who was on my bedroom walls when I was a kid, and how anxious I was, and you just think, shit, I'm out here having a surf at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody else out here. Look how pristine this is at Maroochydore Beach. It's literally one of the nicest places on the planet, but I'd rather be anywhere else because I'm about to have a conversation with someone who I've been listening to for the better part of 25 years, and.
So funny, like I have talked to heaps of people from bands, from when I was a kid, and sometimes I get so nervous beforehand, you know what I mean? Like just really nervous. I remember Carl Willits was definitely nervous, but once we got chatting, Aaron Stainthorpe from My Dying Bride, people. And Chuck Billy from Testament, because, Testament, the Ritual came out when I was in a band. I remember one band practice, we sat around listening to it. And, posters of these guys on your wall. And then when you chat, you're kind of like, hey, how you going? But once you sort of get going and that, the anxiety just sort of leaves and you have this great conversation. But I do enjoy that thrill beforehand. And even Dirk Van Buren, who's now drumming for Megadeth, I talked to him a while ago when he did some stuff with the old mate from Cadaver.
Yeah, and I interviewed him as well on that cycle,
Yeah. Because once we started chatting, he was like, dude, I'm pretty much the same as you because I grew up with that same, because I had Cadaver's first album, Ignominious Eczema, on cassette.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, when I was like in year 11. And I remember we used to go and get smoke cones on the hill and listen to it. I can't do pot anymore. About 19, I got stoned and got really fucking paranoid, and I've never been able to sort of do it since. So
cross the threshold,
yeah, and that's that threshold we were talking about too earlier, where you got to learn where yourself neuropathy. And he was sort of saying, I'm the same as you. I grew up with these albums and all that sort of stuff. And I said, yeah, but look where you are. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not sure exactly where you are right now, but you're talking to me, so you've done all right. And I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool point. and just, one of my favourite things I think about getting into music and the way we've done it is that none of my heroes have turned out to be douchebags. Do you know what I mean? They've all been really fucking nice, really cool people.
Is that right? How many people do you think you've interviewed or spoken to? Like 600, 600? Do you reckon it's up around that mark?
I'd say it'd be probably somewhere between 100, 200. And bigger names, I'd probably say on the 60 to 70 list, sort of varied, like guys from the Tea Party, Nick Oliveri, Queens of the Stone Age and stuff like that. But I still yet to come across, and I guess some people are in an interview frame of mind, but the way that I do my interviews, everyone used to say like, oh, this is a really different kind of interview. It's like me and you just having a chill chat. And then sort of later I'd just take the better parts out and sort of formulate that into an article. And but yes, just really just nervous. But yeah, haven't come across anyone who was a douchebag. The only probably awkward interview I had, and it actually when it wrote it wrote out really well. But when I was doing the interview, it was Lord Aram from Dark Funeral.
Oh, yeah, I spoke to him. Yeah.
It was more just because of his actual English wasn't, I'd say, A grade.
I know, yeah, I found the same. Yeah, he's a good guy. It's just that he's a bit, what I say, vous parlez anglais. You know, it's not quite there yet. Yeah.
And it wasn't quite there. And I was like, okay, so I recorded it. But then when I actually wrote it out and, you know, the flow of the conversation was removed and you were just reading the actual, you know, at the speed you read, it was a fine interview. There was nothing wrong with it. But just that was probably the only real awkward interview I had. And that was just more based around, his grasp on English and you know, his speed to answer. Than anything else. So,
Demonaz was similar, except I had a fantastic conversation with Harold, you know, Harold or Demonaz, you know, had a fantastic, one of my favourites actually was with him. He's, I think, you know, you got a lot of these cult, you know, KVLT black metal fans sort of interviewing him, and I think he was over it. You know, because he's a normal guy. He's like you and I, mate. You know, I mean, people.
And, what's his name? Eric from what's the band? The black metal band that threw all the guts on people in New York.
Yeah, Watain, Eric Danielson.
Watain, yeah. Me and him laughed our asses off.
Yeah, same.
A great guy. You know what I mean? Like, and just, I think too many people out there just forget that separation between the fact that musicians are still, you know, it's part character acting, it's part, you know.
Well, he's running a business. I mean, he is one of the sharpest guys I've spoken to. And look, we spoke, I pointed out to him and he had to sort of pause and go, holy shit, you know, he beat ABBA in the charts for a week. You know, they outsold ABBA in the Swedish charts for a week. And he goes, and I said, something to tell your parents, saying, he says, that's like literally the one. And he laughed. He goes, yeah, that's literally the one relatable thing between my parents and I about the band that they could understand. It's like, my son outsold ABBA, you know, in this satanic black metal outfit.
When I see that Dimmy Borger went to number 6 on the Norwegian charts.
Oh, Norwegian, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Gateways, which has that Norwegian female singer. She's like their version of Kylie Minogue sort of thing. She's a pop singer.
Okay, yeah.
The chick that does the witchy kind of voice in that. To me, it was just amazing because it's very symphonic and very, very graspable. But at the same time, it's still very extreme, you know, and with some really full-on visuals. But to go to number 6, I'm like, wow, there's a culture of people that can actually just listen to music, you know, for melody and rhythm. And as I was saying earlier, you know, I drive my daughter to school and she listens to Arctic Monkeys and Bloodbath will be on, but I'll watch that left foot. It'll be tapping away. You know what I mean? Like, she's still hearing the beat. She's still hearing the melody. Doesn't matter how heavy it sort of is. You know what I mean? Like, it's there's still that raw sort of humanness there. And I think one of the most relatable things I ever heard was Bruce Dickinson said back in an interview I read about 88 or 89 when I was a kid. He said, if someone who doesn't like our music comes to a show and doesn't find anywhere along that show to tap their foot to, there's something wrong with their ears. And I was like, yep. I have to agree with that entirely, especially Maiden. I mean, you know, not that extreme of a band, but, you know, there's definitely some good beats and some good stuff going on there. And as I said, me and my wife meet halfway on Tool. I make extreme metal and sing extreme, but absolutely love Maynard James Kennan's voice. I think it's a beautiful voice. And their music, to me, a lot of people don't like Tool for the reasons that Tool are great. You know, it's full of bass, it's full of those kind of long build-up-y sort of...
Well, it's like AC/DC. It's you know, from the first album to the last one, whatever that was called, the name escapes me. It's Fear Inoculum, I think it was called, or whatever, Inoculus or whatever it was. They're very similar. You know, the only thing that really changes is the production technique, but the songwriting is virtually the same.
Yeah, and I've watched a guy, you know, those people that break things down on YouTube. And he's got a really good name. It's like Friedengard or something. And it's actually quite interesting to watch because he says that we don't actually have the right languages yet to talk about music outside of musical theory. And so he breaks some songs down like schism, which he says is, a schism is a fracture. And if you want to look at the song as a whole, that song has 42 time change pieces in it, which is a schism in itself. And just that kind of smartassery as a band, I don't know whether it's done on purpose or, you know, that's the whole thing. That's just what happens when they get together. I find very interesting. And also a band that's kind of gone, no, we're doing it our way and we're just going to do whatever we want. And I mean, if you've ever read half their interviews, they just speak shit. It's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
I read an article once with Maynard. I don't know. He was just going on about, look out, the Chinese are coming, and it was just nonsense.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a lot like that. Yeah.
And
Very
I
left of
like that.
centre.
I watched the thing about his vineyard, and he was out there snipping the little plants in the ground, and he looked up and he said, "Am I doing this for the video, or do I actually do this?" That's the thing. You'll never know. And I think that's hilarious. You know what I mean? That he can actually see things so objectively. That am I doing this just for core value to me? You know, like the Bunnings people when you see on the ad, you know, the CEO getting down and getting dirty. You know, like. Is it that level, or you know, am I actually this interested, or am I just fucking with you? You know, like I sort of like that. So we have that sort of midpoint, and that's where if I've been sort of, we got Spotify, we have thousands of songs we've all picked, and we put on like songs, and it's just funny because I'll be riding home on my motorcycle and I can't change it because I'm riding around, jacking it up with gloves, and Spotify will be evil and it'll play like Tom Waits and Leonard Cohen and shit that I don't want to listen to. And then we'll sit here and they'll put it on, and instead of getting what it's just like Bloodbath,
Morbid Angel or whatever. Yeah,
inside Morbid Angel, and just it just has these full like I'm doing death metal today, and it's just random how it does that. I think that's quite hilarious too, actually. I think it's called apophilia, is when people see coincidences that are connected. That aren't objectively connected. So I remember talking to someone a while ago, and they were saying that they blow out streetlights when they drive under them. And I was thinking, it's a really weird thing because I've seen streetlights go out when I go under, but never have I thought that I've done it. You know what I mean? So, so I kind of go, that must be what they mean by that, connecting things without that actual real connection. And there are some weird coincidences that happen in life. When I started this new job, the guy that was teaching me, I just randomly asked him stuff about different vehicle parts and all these bits and pieces. And 5 minutes later, someone would come in and ask for one of those, or ring up and ask for one of the things that I asked about, which is like something that someone orders once every 6 months, like a blue moon kind of thing. And yet everything we seemed to talk about for the first few weeks he was teaching me would lead to someone wanting one within the 24 hours. And it was just, it got to a point where it was really spooky. I'm like, this is really weird. And then I went to get my, law of attraction. Went to get my big bike license that weekend. And it just turned out that of all the places to choose in Brisbane, the girl who used to work with this guy, because they're like, what do you guys do for a living? Like, I'm in spare parts. She goes, I'm in spare parts. And he goes, what kind of parts? I said, truck. She goes, I'm in Isuzu, but I used to be in truck. And then we worked out that she used to actually sit at my desk. And we were talking about this. And when I went back to work and told old mate, he's just like, this is just getting strange, you know? Like, it was just really just one of those full on, like, it's just a big string of coincidences. And I don't know, sometimes you feel deja vu. And to me, when I feel deja vu, I feel that I'm where I'm supposed to be. I know that sounds weird because people go, I feel like I've done this before, and they worry about it.
Definitely. Yeah.
I feel like I've done it before, and it's a whole bunch of things. You know, it's a sound, it's something that comes on the TV at the same time, and someone walking in the front door. It's like it's a whole bunch of things that just happen, and you go, this has happened before. I love that feeling, and I go, I'm where I'm supposed to be. It makes me actually, it does make me feel anxious. It makes me feel at home.
So there you have it, my chat with Jekyll Jones from Vegas Rhythm Kings and Gangs of Old Ladies. Hope you enjoyed that one, because if you did, you can find over 550 more just like it at scarsandguitars.com, and also on my YouTube channel, I'm easily found. Just type in Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, it is goodbye for now.